Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kira and today is my very first full-length color along on my channel. If this is your first video of mine that you're seeing, I promise I don't usually look this glam. I'm usually keeping it a lot more casual, but I'm going out after filming this, so this is why I look like this. Now, I personally don't watch a whole heap of color alongs, but there were so many requests for me to do one, so here it is. And basically, I filmed and edited this video in a format that I would want to watch. So I've sped up the coloring so we're not here for 8 hours, and I'm also going to be narrating you through my coloring process as well, and just having a little bit of a chat, sharing some tips and talking about coloring. I kind of want this color along to feel like a visual podcast where you can just color along, have me on in the background, either doing this page or doing whatever page you're working on currently. I just want it to feel like we're sitting down, doing some coloring and chatting together. So hopefully you get that vibe from this video. But please do let me know what you think of this format and leave any constructive criticism in the comments below. I always want to improve and better my videos to make them as easy and watchable for you to enjoy. Now, I put a little poll on the community tab here on my channel. I put two options, one from Rita Berman's Asia book and one from Rita Berman's Europa book, and the page from the Europa book won out. Rita Berman's books just hold such a special place in my heart, so I would have been happy with either choice. And the supplies we'll be using today are my Born watercolor pencil set. This is just a home brand here in Australia from our local office supplies chain, but seriously, you can use any sort of budget water pencil in lieu of this set. I'll also be using a few pencils from this Derwent watercolor pencil set. I'll also be using my brand new set of 150 Prismacolor pencils, an electric eraser, a white Posca paint pen, as well as a white Arrtx paint pen. Oh, and my gold Pentel hybrid dual metallic gel pens. Oh, I always struggle to say the full name of those pens. All right, let's get into the color along. All right, voiceover Kira has entered the chat. I don't know if I'll be able to talk for the entirety of this color along, but I'll definitely try to keep you company for the majority of it. So let's dive into what I'm doing here. The first thing you'll notice is that I'm basing the page with watercolor pencil. Basing my pages is a technique that I started implementing around 2 to 3 months ago, and now it's a go-to for most of my work, especially in my Rita Berman coloring books. To date, I've experimented with 3 different mediums for basing: alcohol markers, watercolor pencils, and acrylic markers. If you caught my recent YouTube video, you would have seen me basing with acrylic marker for the very first time. I highly recommend checking that video out if you haven't already. But I found that starting with a base layer, regardless of the medium, really speeds up and also smooths out my coloring process. As you can see, I'm only applying a super light layer of pencil here. The goal is just to create a gentle wash of color. This base layer will either serve as the highlight colors on my page or as the undertone for specific areas that I'm coloring. Speaking of techniques, I stumbled upon a really cool one recently on an Instagram account called chica_color. If you don't follow them already, seriously do yourself a favor and check them out. They use like a light wash of yellow over their entire page as an undercoat before layering their other coloring mediums on top. This method results in like a beautifully cohesive and just glowy finish. I am so dying to try it out, but it's going to take me some time to build up the courage because I can easily see it going sideways for me. But hey, that's the fun of experimenting, right? Now back to the topic of basing. Not only does basing help me color a little bit quicker since I don't have to worry about covering every bit of white tooth on the page, but it also takes the guesswork out of, the color placement when it comes to shading. Everything is already mapped out for me, so I know exactly where each color is going to go and I can just purely focus on the shading aspect. One thing I didn't do during the basing stage for this page though was color in the background. Normally that is like the first thing I tackle, but I really couldn't visualize what color I wanted the background to be or just like what I wanted to look like in general, so I decided to leave this until the very end, and that's a tip that I always recommend. If there's a part of your page that you're unsure about, leave coloring it until the very end, because by then you'll have a better idea of what colors are missing and what will complement the rest of the page. Now, for those of you who regularly watch my channel, you might be shocked to see that I'm not using my holy grail Brute Funers for this page. Nope, I'm actually using Prismacolors. Yes, your girl finally got her hands on the infamous Prismacolors, and I've officially joined the Prismacolor bandwagon. This page was actually only my second time using them, and let me tell you, there's definitely been a little bit of a learning curve. I'm thinking of doing a video in the future comparing Brute Funers and Prismacolors, but let's just say I quickly realized I needed to adapt the technique I've been using with my Brute Funers for the past 10 months. I feel like I only started to get the hang of the Prismacolors towards the end of coloring this page, so yeah, you'll witness a lot of trial and error during this color along. I don't know why I decided to test so many new techniques and products in my very first color along, but apparently I was feeling very, very brave, or at least my subconscious was. I don't know if I was particularly feeling brave. But speaking of new products, I also recently purchased this Derwent electric razor and decided to try it out in this video to create a somewhat bokeh background for the first time. Fortunately, stepping out of my comfort zone worked in my favor this time, and I'm actually really happy with the result. I'm definitely going to experiment more with this eraser in the future for creating a bokeh effect, as well as things like sun rays and clouds. I've seen others do this amazingly, so it's about time that I learn as well. Lately, I've been really trying to push myself to get comfortable with being uncomfortable when it comes to coloring. The more I experiment, the more I learn, improve, and grow, and what's that saying where they say, nothing good comes from comfort zones? I don't know, something like that. I think it's just about embracing imperfection and understanding that even if you don't create a masterpiece, you'll have still learnt something valuable at the end of the day, and both outcomes are equally as important as each other. Okay, let's shift gears just a little bit and chat about a question that I often get, which is how does one create color combinations like Rita Berman? Oh, do I wish I had the perfect answer to this question, but if you've never seen Rita Berman's work before, pause this video immediately and hop onto her Instagram because her coloring is just perfection in my eyes. One day I can only hope to be half the colorist that she is. She is literally my biggest inspiration by far, and I try to bring some of her style into my pages as much as possible, especially when coloring in her books. And I've done this in the past and currently via 2 different methods. The first method I don't really do anymore, but it was a great first step, and that was just trying to recreate her coloring pages myself. Rita Berman doesn't really do any tutorials herself, so this was a lot of trial and error on my part, and honestly, I've really enjoyed this process. I loved the challenge of trying to recreate a page without knowing the exact pencils or colors that were used. It's like trying to solve a puzzle or a riddle, and for some reason my brain just really thrives on that kind of challenge. Of course, there is so much experimentation involved, but when you finally recreate something that you only had a picture of initially, it's just incredibly satisfying. The second method is one that I currently use now that I've moved past the replication phase, if you will, and that involves analyzing Rita Berman's color combinations. This is another topic I plan to dive deeper into in a future video, but for now, here's a quick overview of what I mean. Basically, I've been studying Rita Berman's work on Instagram and Pinterest to see what color combinations she typically uses. For example, if I want to color an object yellow, I'll look at a few examples of her work where she's used yellow and note the colors she's combined it with. Usually this is orange, red, pink, purple, or a mix of all of the above. You'll be able to see this method in action on this page, where I used teal as the predominant color for the leaves, but then added touches of pink and yellow to create more visual interest. This method definitely requires more trial and error than the first one, and I've ended up with many muddy color blends along the way, but slowly I'm getting better, I'm progressing, and now that I have my Prismacolors, I'm relearning everything again because they behave so differently from my brute Funers. As I previously mentioned, an artist grade pencil like Prismacolors isn't going to perform the same as a budget pencil, obviously. So I'm working on getting to know the different brands I own and adapting my techniques to suit whichever pencil I'm using. With my brute Funers, I realized I was kind of doing a mix of layering and blending, where I'd lay down the darkest shade first and then layer the next color on top, and the first color wouldn't change too dramatically. However, with Prismacolors, since they're so soft and pigmented, any two colors you put together will pretty much blend into a new color. So that's been a new experience for me. I'm learning to only overlap colors when I'm trying to create a gradient, and not to color directly over the previous color unless I'm intentionally blending them. I also want to reassure you that I don't plan on exclusively using Prismacolors in my videos now that I own them. I still plan on doing lots of videos with my brute Funers and other budget pencil brands because I know many of you are budget colorists as well. In fact, I've had my Prismacolors for nearly a month now and I've only used them to color 3 pages. So yes, my brute Funers are still getting plenty of love. Plus, I'm trying to use my Prismacolors more sparingly since they are a pricier product. However, I do think that once I get over the learning curve, I'll really enjoy working with them. I only decided to use Prismacolors for my first color along because I felt like a majority of the coloring community owns them, so it might possibly be easier for you to follow along more accurately. So, how are we enjoying the color along so far? I know it's a bit different from the typical color alongs out there, but I really wanted to create a video that I would personally want to watch. I love it when people chat during their tutorials, even if it's not directly related to what's happening on the screen. It makes it feel like we're just two friends sitting together, having a chat and doing some coloring together. I know that I've sped up my coloring quite a bit, but feel free to adjust the playback speed if you want to slow down the video and take a closer look at what I'm doing. I'm just aiming to keep my color alongs under an hour in length. Firstly, because I'm a perfectionist when it comes to filming and editing, so it would take me months to get a real-time color along out. And secondly, because I know how limited people's attention spans and time is these days. When I watch a color along, I'm usually just looking to pick up a few color combinations and the overall approach that the colorist uses. So hopefully this video does that for you. I was actually super anxious before and during the filming of this video. A lot of people have been asking me for a color along, and I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to create like this amazing page, but I know I need to be less hard on myself and I'm really trying to improve on that front. The perfectionist in me likes to put in 110% effort into everything I do, but I know that's not sustainable in the long term. So this color along is definitely an exercise in letting go, having some fun, and just enjoying the process. Plus, I know you all don't expect me to create a masterpiece every single time. You just want to see my process, learn some new techniques, and be inspired. I still can't believe how supportive and loving the coloring community is. I have not yet even received a negative comment, knock on wood, that I don't get one for this video. So I don't know why I was freaking myself out so much about filming this color along. Maybe it's just that little voice of doubt we all have sometimes, the one that makes us second guess our decisions and worry about how things will turn out. Yeah, I definitely think I was getting in my head a bit too much while coloring this video. I kept second guessing a lot of the decisions I was making and the overall outcome. There were more than a few times when I thought to myself, oh, maybe I should just scrap this video altogether because I'm not doing a good job. But I persevered, I pushed through, through, I ignored those annoying little voices whispering, or rather screaming, in my head, and now here we are. The video is finally here for you to watch, and I'm so glad I didn't give up. I'm learning that it's okay not to be perfect, and that it's all a part of the process. Hopefully, as I continue to create and grow this channel, I'll just get more and more confident and comfortable with filming my coloring process. It's a journey, and I'm excited to keep improving with each video. In hindsight, I am fairly happy with how this page turned out. Do I think it's the best page I've ever colored? Probably not. But I do think it gives you a good idea of how I color, how I blend my colors together, and how I approach a page from start to finish. And that's the whole point, right? I mean, I'm sharing my process so that we can learn and grow together. I will admit I did not anticipate this page turning out as bright and saturated as it did. But yet again, I think that's just because I haven't worked with Prismacolors much, and especially I haven't done any sort of Prismacolor work in Rita Berman's coloring books before either. The pencils really do have such a rich, vibrant pigment, which is something I'm definitely not used to after using brute funers for so long. So yeah, the page definitely turned out differently than I had originally planned in my head, but I've said it a gazillion times, there are no mistakes, just lessons. And this page was a big lesson in how to use Prismacolors and what to expect from them. Alright, I'm gonna take a quick drink break. I really need some water, but I'll be back shortly to chat you through my favorite and final stages of the coloring process. Now, when it came to choosing the background for this page, I went back and forth a lot. At one point, I was seriously contemplating just going in with a black acrylic paint pen and coloring it all in. I mean, it is something that I've been meaning to try for a while now, and it seems like this might be the perfect opportunity to try it out, but ultimately, I decided against it. I had already tried so many new mediums and techniques on this page that I figured I'd hold off on that one for now. Something else I'll build up the courage to try one day, but for this page, I opted for something a little bit simpler. Instead, I decided to take the darkest blue shade that I had used for the sky behind the cottage and blend it out into a super light blue. As I said, the forefront of the page turned out way more saturated than I anticipated, so I didn't want to overwhelm the page by adding even more saturated dark colors for the background. I think the lighter background helps balance everything out and keeps the focus where it should be, on the main elements of the page. Once the background was complete, it was time for my favorite step, acrylic marker details. Now this step is totally optional, but as I talked about in my last video, I've found that since incorporating acrylic markers into my coloring pages, the end result just feels so much more elevated. There's something about those crisp white details that really makes the whole page come alive, in my opinion. And I definitely went all out with the acrylic marker on this page, mainly because I felt like some of the highlights and details had been lost with the saturation of the Prismacolors. Plus, I wanted to create the snow and emphasize that magical winter wonderland effect that I was going for. This was actually my first time using a white Posca paint pen instead of my usual budget white acrylic paint pens, and oh my goodness, it made such a difference. Yeah, sometimes supplies are more expensive for a reason. The Posca pen just went down so much smoother, was a lot thinner than the pens that I usually use, and the effect was so much better, so I'll definitely be using it more often from now on. I also used my white 3mm Arrtx acrylic marker for the larger snow details, just to create a bit of variance in the size of the falling snow because, you know, as we all know, snowflakes aren't the same size. And I think adding those little differences really helps to create a more realistic and dynamic page. Though with all of that being said, I do still find myself sometimes going a little bit overboard with the white acrylic paint pen. There's definitely a fine line between the perfect amount and too much, and yeah, I think I tend to err towards the latter more often than not. But the great thing about acrylic markers is that most of the time, if you haven't done too many layers, you can actually go in and scratch off the paint with your fingernail once it's dry. I did that for this page on the bottom half of the acorns because I wasn't loving how thick the white outlines were that I had drawn. So yeah, just went in with my fingernail, scratched off as much paint as possible, and then fixed up any imperfections afterwards. It's definitely a trick that I've picked up that's, come in handy. As always, I leave my super tiny details until the very end and color them in with a glitter gel pen. For this page, I actually didn't have too many leftover spaces to color, mostly just the centers of the flowers. And then voila, we're done. And there you have it, my first color along on this channel. It's definitely not perfect. I'm still what I would classify at the beginning of my coloring journey, so I still make a lot of mistakes, but hopefully you were able to pick up something or learn what not to do on your pages. And as I said at the beginning of the video, please let me know how I can improve these videos in the future. This channel is for you, and I just want to make sure you're enjoying my content. If you got to this part of the video, you are seriously a real one. Thank you so much for supporting my little corner of the internet. Happy coloring, friends. Have a good day, have a good life, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.